The train whistle pierced the stillness of the afternoon as Olivia Fairchild clutched her worn leather valise, her knuckles white with apprehension. The locomotive shuddered to a halt at Palisade, Nevada, a dusty outpost that would be her new home, the place where Harrison Barlow, her soon-to-be husband, awaited. Only he didn't. He couldn't, because Harrison Barlow was dead. "End of the line, miss," the conductor called, tipping his hat as Olivia gathered her skirts and stepped down onto the weathered platform. The May sun beat down mercilessly on her pale skin, a stark reminder of how far she'd traveled from her rain-soaked Boston home. 23 years she'd spent in Massachusetts, the last 5 working as a seamstress after her parents' passing left her alone in the world. When the opportunity to become a mail-order bride presented itself through an advertisement in the matrimonial news, Olivia had seized it with both hands. Her ticket to a new beginning in 1882. Her correspondence with Harrison had been brief but promising. A cattle rancher with a modest spread just outside of Palisade, he'd written of his desire for companionship and his promise to provide a good home. 3 letters exchanged, a photograph of him standing proudly before his ranch house, and Olivia had made her decision. Now, as she stood on the platform scanning unfamiliar faces, a sense of unease crept up her spine. No one approached to claim her. "Excuse me," she asked the station master, a balding man with spectacles perched on the end of his nose. "I'm looking for Harrison Barlow. He was to meet me here today." The station master's expression shifted, sympathy replacing indifference. "Miss Fairchild?" "Yes," she replied, her stomach tightening. "I'm afraid I have some unfortunate news." He removed his hat, holding it against his chest. "Mr. Barlow passed away 3 days ago. Snakebite while mending fences on his property. The doctor couldn't save him." The platform seemed to tilt beneath Olivia's feet. She reached for the nearby bench, lowering herself onto it as the station master continued speaking, his words becoming distant echoes. "Sheriff's been trying to send word, but I reckon the telegram didn't reach you in time." "No," Olivia whispered, staring at her valise. "It didn't. 2,000 miles from home, with less than $20 to her name and no return ticket, Olivia had wagered everything on this new life. Now Harrison was gone, and with him, all her carefully laid plans. "What will you do, miss?" the station master asked, his voice gentle. Before she could answer, a deep voice cut through her thoughts. "Miss Fairchild?" Olivia looked up to see a tall man standing before her. His face was weathered by sun and wind, his eyes a startling blue beneath the brim of his Stetson. Broad-shouldered and lean-hipped, he stood with the easy confidence of a man accustomed to hard work and open spaces. "I'm Wade O'Brien," he said, removing his hat. "I own the ranch neighboring Barlow's place. I'm mighty sorry about what happened." Olivia nodded, unable to form words as the reality of her situation continued to sink in. "Town's not big on accommodations," Wade continued, his gaze direct yet somehow gentle. "The saloon has rooms, but it's no place for a lady. Harrison was a good neighbor. I figured the least I could do was come meet his intended." "Thank you, Mr. O'Brien, but Olivia faltered, unsure what to say. What options did she have? The station master had drifted away, leaving her alone with this stranger. "My door is open," Wade said simply. "I've got a spare room in my house where you can stay while you sort things out. No obligations, no expectations, just a roof and some time to figure your next move." Suspicion flared in Olivia's mind. A woman alone accepting such an offer from a strange man would be considered scandalous back east. Wade seemed to read her thoughts. "Mrs. Hollister from the Mercantile stays out at my place 3 days a week, helping with housekeeping. She'll be there today and tomorrow. You'll have a proper chaperone, Miss Fairchild. I give you my word as a gentleman." Relief washed over her, followed quickly by shame at her assumption. "I don't wish to impose. It's no imposition. Harrison spoke highly of you in his letters." A ghost of a smile crossed Wade's face. "Said you were brave to come out here sight unseen." "Not brave," Olivia corrected quietly. "Desperate," Wade nodded, as if understanding completely. "Sometimes they're the same thing." He gestured toward a wagon parked near the station. "My offer stands. You're welcome to stay until you decide what comes next." Olivia hesitated only a moment before rising from the bench. What choice did she have? "Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. I accept your kindness." The ride from Palisade to Wade's ranch passed in relative silence. Olivia was grateful for it, needing time to process the shocking turn her life had taken. The landscape unfolded around them, rolling hills giving way to sagebrush plains, distant mountains etched against the sky, so different from Boston's crowded streets and brick buildings. "That's Barlow's place," Wade said eventually, nodding toward a modest homestead as they passed. A small house with a porch, a barn, and corrals. It looked so much like the photograph Harrison had sent that Olivia felt tears threatening. "And this is mine," he added a few minutes later as they crested a rise. Below them stretched a larger property, a two-story house painted white with green trim, several outbuildings and cattle grazing in the distance. "It's lovely," Olivia managed, surprised by the prosperity it suggested. Wade guided the wagon to the front of the house where an older woman in an apron stood waiting, her gray hair pulled into a severe bun. "Mrs. Hollister," Wade called as he set the brake. "This is Miss Fairchild. She'll be staying with us for a spell." The woman's stern expression softened as she took in Olivia's travel-worn appearance. "Heard about poor Mr. Barlow. Welcome, child. Let's get you settled." Inside, the house revealed itself to be surprisingly comfortable. Though masculine in its furnishings, it was clean and well-maintained. Mrs. Hollister led Olivia to a bedroom on the second floor, simple but pleasant, with an iron-framed bed, dresser, and washstand. "Mr. O'Brien's room is downstairs," the older woman explained. This was his sister's room before she married and moved to California. Bathrooms at the end of the hall. He had indoor plumbing put in last year, quite modern for these parts. Olivia set her valise on the bed. "Thank you, I won't be staying long, just until I can make other arrangements." Mrs. Hollister eyed her shrewdly. "And what arrangements might those be, miss?" "Palisade's not Boston. Options for an unmarried woman are limited, especially one with no family connections." The blunt assessment stung, though Olivia couldn't deny its truth. "I have skills. I'm an excellent seamstress." "That might serve you well in town," Mrs. Hollister conceded, "though Mrs. Peterson already does most of the sewing work thereabouts." She paused. "Why don't you rest now? Supper's at 6. Mr. O'Brien keeps regular hours." Left alone, Olivia sank onto the bed, the enormity of her situation crashing down upon her. She had come west to marry a man she'd never met, and now he was dead. She was stranded in unfamiliar territory, dependent on the charity of a stranger. Tears came then, the ones she'd been holding back since the station master's announcement. She wept quietly for the life she'd left behind, for Harrison whom she'd never know, and for the uncertain future that stretched before her. When she descended the stairs that evening, composed but hollow-eyed, Wade and Mrs. Hollister were already seated at the dining table. The room smelled of roast beef and fresh bread, making Olivia suddenly aware of how little she'd eaten during her journey. "Just in time," Wade said, rising as she entered. He held out a chair for her, a courtesy she hadn't expected from a rancher. Dinner proved to be a surprisingly comfortable affair. Mrs. Hollister kept the conversation flowing with tales of local happenings, while Wade occasionally interjected with dry observations that revealed an unexpected wit. Neither of them pressed Olivia for details about her past or her plans, for which she was grateful. As they finished their meal, Wade cleared his throat. "I've been thinking, Miss Fairchild, Harrison's place will need looking after until his affairs are settled. His lawyer's in Virginia City, and it might be a while before they determine what happens to the property." Olivia set down her fork. "I don't understand. What does that have to do with me?" "I was wondering if you might consider staying there," Wade said. "The house is furnished, and there's a garden that needs tending. It would give you a place of your own while you decide your next steps. I could help with the livestock. He didn't have much, just a few horses and some chickens." Mrs. Hollister nodded approvingly. "It would be proper, especially with Mr. O'Brien's foreman and his wife living in the small cabin behind the main house. You wouldn't be alone." Olivia blinked, surprised by the suggestion, "But I have no claim to Mr. Barlow's property." "You were to be his wife," Wade said simply. "Seems to me you have more right to be there than anyone, at least temporarily. Besides, an empty house invites trouble. Having someone living there would be doing me a favor as his neighbor." The offer was unexpected but not unwelcome. The thought of having her own space, even temporarily, appealed to Olivia far more than remaining as Wade's charity case. "That's very kind," she said finally. "I accept, though I insist on earning my keep." A smile touched the corners of Wade's mouth. "We can discuss that tomorrow. For now, get some rest. It's been a long day for you." The following morning, after breakfast, Wade drove Olivia to Harrison's property. In the clear light of day, she could better appreciate the modest ranch, 20 acres of land, a small herd of cattle, and the tidy house that would have been her home had circumstances been different. "It's not much compared to some spreads," Wade said as they walked toward the house, but Harrison was proud of it, built most of it himself. Inside, the house was simple but well-crafted. A main room with a stone fireplace, a kitchen with a cast-iron stove, 2 bedrooms, and basic furnishings. Everything was neat, if somewhat Spartan, speaking to Harrison's solitary existence. "The garden's out back," Wade continued, leading her through the kitchen to a rear door. Harrison wasn't much for growing things beyond beans and potatoes, but the soil's good. The garden was overgrown but showed potential. Olivia could imagine coaxing vegetables and perhaps flowers from the neglected earth. "I'll introduce you to Miguel and Rosa," Wade said. "They've been looking after the place since, well, you know." Miguel Reyes and his wife Rosa lived in a small cabin 100 yards from the main house. They greeted Olivia warmly, expressing condolences for Harrison's passing while simultaneously welcoming her as if she truly had been his widow. "Rosa can show you where everything is," Wade said. "I'll bring your things from my place this afternoon. Is there anything else you need?" Olivia shook her head, oddly touched by his consideration. "You've done more than enough, Mr. O'Brien. I don't know how to thank you." "Wade," he corrected with a small smile, "and no thanks necessary. That's how we survive out here, looking after each other." As Wade rode away, Olivia turned to face the house, Harrison's house, that would be her temporary home. It wasn't what she had expected when she boarded the train in Boston, but perhaps it would provide the shelter she needed to rebuild her dreams. The first week passed in a blur of adjustment. Rosa proved invaluable, teaching Olivia about the rhythms of ranch life, how to manage the stove, where to find the well, which local plants were edible. Miguel handled the livestock with Wade's occasional help, ensuring Olivia needn't concern herself with that aspect of ranch operations. On her third day, Sheriff Tanner rode out to officially inform her of Harrison's death and inquire about her plans. A gruff man with a silver mustache, he seemed satisfied when she explained her temporary arrangement. "Barlow didn't leave a will that we know of," he told her. "Lawyer's been notified, but these things take time. Meanwhile, having you here keeps the property occupied, which suits everyone just fine." When he asked if she needed anything from town, Olivia hesitated before requesting fabric. "I'm a seamstress by trade." "I thought perhaps I could make some things to sell." The sheriff nodded approvingly. "Good thinking. Mrs. Peterson does most of the sewing in town, but she's getting on in years, might welcome the help." True to his word, the sheriff returned 2 days later with several bolts of fabric, threads, and notions purchased with the small advance Olivia had offered from her meager savings. Wade visited every other day, ostensibly to check on the cattle, but invariably finding reasons to stop by the house. Sometimes he brought supplies, coffee, sugar, or fresh beef from his own slaughter. Other times he simply appeared to inquire about her welfare. Olivia found herself looking forward to these visits. Wade was unlike any man she'd known in Boston, straightforward yet courteous, capable yet unassuming. He spoke little of himself, though through casual conversation she learned he'd come west from Pennsylvania after the war, building his ranch from nearly nothing over the past 15 years. On the 10th day, Wade arrived with unexpected news. "Reverend Simmons is holding a service for Harrison tomorrow. Thought you might want to attend." Olivia looked up from the shirt she was mending, one of Miguel's that needed new buttons. "A funeral?" Wade nodded. "More of a memorial. He's already buried in the town cemetery, but the Reverend thought it proper to have a service now that you're here. Harrison didn't have family, but he had friends." The thought of attending a service for a man she'd never met was strange, yet Olivia felt a responsibility to the arrangement they'd made, the life they'd planned together through their letters. "I'll come," she said softly. "It would be disrespectful not to." The following morning, Wade collected her in his wagon. Olivia wore her one good dress navy blue with a lace collar, somber enough for the occasion. The small church in Palisade was filled with perhaps 20 people, many of whom studied Olivia with undisguised curiosity. Reverend Simmons spoke eloquently about Harrison's character, his honesty, his work ethic, his friendliness. Wade sat beside Olivia in the front pew, a solid presence that helped her maintain composure as she listened to descriptions of the man who should have been her husband. Afterward, several townspeople approached to introduce themselves and express condolences. Most were kind, though Olivia detected an undercurrent of speculation in their scrutiny. A young woman arriving to marry a man now dead, staying alone at his property, it was fodder for gossip no matter how innocent the arrangement. Mrs. Peterson, the town's seamstress, proved particularly friendly. An elderly woman with arthritic hands, she brightened when Olivia mentioned her profession. "I've more work than these old fingers can manage these days," she confided. "If you're looking to ply your trade, I'd be grateful for the help. Could send some mending your way to start." This unexpected opportunity lifted Olivia's spirits. Having work of her own would provide not only income but purpose. As they prepared to leave, Wade introduced Olivia to Elias Thornton, a thin man with spectacles who turned out to be Harrison's lawyer, recently arrived from Virginia City. "I've been reviewing Mr. Barlow's affairs," Thornton explained. "It seems he did leave a will, though it's some years old. I'd like to discuss it with you both tomorrow, if convenient, perhaps at the property." Wade agreed to bring Thornton out the next afternoon, then escorted Olivia back to the wagon. The ride home was quiet, both lost in their own thoughts about what the lawyer might reveal. Thornton arrived promptly at 2 o'clock the following day, his leather satchel tucked under one arm. Wade had come earlier to ensure Olivia wasn't alone for the meeting. Seated at Harrison's kitchen table, Thornton removed several documents from his satchel. "Mr. Barlow's will is straightforward. He left everything to his brother in Ohio. However," he paused, retrieving a letter, "his brother died last year of consumption. With no other heirs specified, the property would normally revert to the state." Olivia nodded, having expected something of the sort. "I understand. How long might I have before I need to vacate?" Thornton cleared his throat. "That's where matters become interesting. Among Mr. Barlow's papers, I found this." He held up an envelope. "It's a letter to his lawyer myself dated just 3 weeks ago, expressing his intention to revise his will following his marriage. He specifically states his desire for his future wife to inherit his property and holdings should anything happen to him." Wade leaned forward. "Is that legally binding?" "Not exactly," Thornton admitted, "but it clearly expresses intent. Additionally, I found copies of Mr. Barlow's correspondence with Miss Fairchild, as well as receipts for the train ticket he purchased for her journey. There is ample evidence of their arrangement." Olivia's heart hammered in her chest. "What does this mean?" "It means," Thornton said carefully, "that you have a legitimate claim to contest the default disposition of the estate. Given the circumstances and lack of other heirs, a judge might very well rule in your favor." Wade's expression remained neutral, but Olivia detected a tension in his posture. "What would Miss Fairchild need to do?" he asked. "File a petition with the territorial court in Carson City. I'd be willing to represent your interests, Miss Fairchild, for the standard fee plus expenses." Olivia's mind raced. The property could be hers, a home, independence, security. Yet the thought of legal proceedings, costs, and inevitable town gossip gave her pause. "I need time to consider this," she said finally. Thornton nodded, gathering his papers. "Of course, the property won't be processed for disposal for at least 6 months. You have time." He handed her a card. "Contact me when you've made your decision." After Thornton departed, Wade remained at the kitchen table, his expression unreadable. "That's unexpected," he said finally. "Yes," Olivia agreed, still processing the revelation. "I never anticipated, I barely knew him." "Harrison was a good man," Wade said quietly, "straightforward. If he said he intended to provide for you, I believe him. But would it be right to claim inheritance when we never actually married?" Wade considered her question seriously. "You left everything behind based on his promise. Seems to me his intention matters more than the technicality." His support surprised and touched her. I don't know what to do, she admitted. Wade rose from the table. You don't have to decide today. Think on it. Meanwhile, life goes on. Miguel mentioned the north fence needs mending. I'll be working on that tomorrow if you'd like to get out of the house. The invitation was casual, yet Olivia found herself accepting eagerly. After days confined mostly to the house and garden, the prospect of a change of scenery appealed to her. The next morning dawned clear and warm. Olivia dressed in her most practical clothes, a simple skirt and blouse, and packed a basket with bread, cheese, and apple preserves Rosa had helped her prepare. When Wade arrived with his tools and fencing materials, she was waiting on the porch. You don't have to help with the actual work, he said as they walked toward the northern boundary. It's not exactly ladies' business. Olivia smiled. I didn't come to be decorative, Mr. O'Brien. I'm stronger than I look. He chuckled, the sound warming something inside her. Wade, he reminded her, and I don't doubt your strength, Miss Fairchild. Olivia, she corrected, realizing they'd finally progressed to first names. Fair's fair. The fence mending proved more physically demanding than Olivia had anticipated, but she insisted on helping holding posts while Wade secured them, carrying tools and even learning to hammer nails. By midday, they were both dusty and tired, ready for the lunch she'd prepared. They sat beneath the shade of a lone cottonwood tree, the gentle rustling of leaves providing relief from the sun's intensity. Wade ate with the hearty appreciation of a man accustomed to physical labor, while Olivia found her own appetite surprisingly robust after the morning's exertions. You're adapting well, Wade observed as they finished their meal. Not every Eastern woman could manage ranch life so readily. Necessity is a powerful motivator, Olivia replied, though she felt a flush of pleasure at the compliment. Besides, Boston wasn't exactly soft living. I worked long hours in the dressmaking shop, often in poor conditions. Wade's expression turned curious. Why leave? Why choose to marry a stranger out west? The directness of the question caught her off guard, but Olivia found herself answering honestly. After my parents died, I was alone. The shop owner was difficult. Hours were long, pay was poor, and he had wandering hands. She looked away, embarrassed by the admission. When I saw Harrison's advertisement, it offered escape, a chance at something better, even with the unknowns. Wade's jaw tightened at the mention of the shop owner, but he simply nodded. Brave decision. As I said before, more desperate than brave. No, Wade insisted. Plenty of women endure bad situations because they fear change. Taking a risk, venturing into the unknown, that's courage, plain and simple. His words settled around her like a warm blanket. For the first time since arriving in Nevada, Olivia felt truly seen and understood. What about you? She asked, deflecting attention from herself. You mentioned Pennsylvania. Do you have family there? A shadow crossed Wade's face. Had parents died when I was young, raised by an uncle who didn't much care for having another mouth to feed. He shrugged. Joined the Union Army at 16, lying about my age. After the war, there wasn't much to go back to, so I headed west. And built all this, Olivia said, gesturing toward his property visible in the distance. A small smile touched his lips. Piece by piece, wasn't always easy, but it's mine. No one can take it away. She understood the pride in his voice, the security that came from building something lasting. It was what she'd hoped to find with Harrison's stability, a place to belong. As they packed up to resume work, Olivia found herself studying Wade more closely. The way sunlight caught in his dark hair, the careful precision of his movements, the quiet confidence he exuded. Something shifted inside her, a warmth that had nothing to do with the afternoon sun. The realization startled her. Wade O'Brien was becoming more than a helpful neighbor. He was becoming someone she looked forward to seeing, someone whose opinion mattered, someone whose rare smile made her heart beat faster. Such feelings were inappropriate, she told herself sternly. She'd come to marry Harrison Barlow. That Harrison was dead didn't change the impropriety of developing feelings for another man so quickly, especially one who had shown her nothing but neighborly kindness. Determined to maintain proper boundaries, Olivia kept conversations strictly practical as they finished repairing the fence. If Wade noticed her sudden reticence, he made no comment. 2 days later, Mrs. Peterson's son delivered a bundle of mending to Olivia shirts needing new collars, dresses requiring alterations, and a wedding dress to be crafted for a young bride. The work was a welcome distraction from her confused feelings and uncertain future. Olivia set up her sewing area in Harrison's front room, where light streamed through windows during the day. The rhythm of needle and thread was soothing, familiar amidst so much change. She found herself humming as she worked, the creative outlet restoring a sense of purpose she'd been missing. Wade continued his regular visits, though Olivia was careful to maintain a certain formality. She mentioned the sewing work, explaining that she hoped to build a clientele that might sustain her regardless of what happened with Harrison's property. Smart thinking, Wade approved. Though I suspect Thornton's right about your claim, Harrison wasn't one for half measures. If he brought you out here to be his wife, he'd have wanted you provided for. Perhaps, Olivia conceded, but I've learned not to depend on others for security. It's too easily lost. Something in her tone must have revealed more than she intended, for Wade studied her with those perceptive blue eyes. Someone let you down before? Olivia hesitated, then nodded. I was engaged once in Boston to the son of a merchant. When my parents died of influenza and our family business failed, he reconsidered the arrangement. His family felt I was no longer a suitable match. Wade's expression darkened. Sounds like you had a fortunate escape from a man of poor character. That's a kind interpretation, Olivia said with a sad smile. At the time, it felt like the final blow in a series of misfortunes. And yet here you are, Wade observed, still standing, still moving forward. His assessment warmed her. I suppose I am. As June progressed, Palisade experienced an unusual heat wave. The days grew scorching, forcing ranch work to start earlier and end by midday when temperatures peaked. Wade began arriving at dawn to help Miguel with the cattle, often staying for breakfast that Rosa and Olivia prepared. These shared meals became a pleasant routine. Wade would discuss ranch matters with Miguel while the women cooked, then they'd all sit together at Harrison's kitchen table. Olivia found herself looking forward to these gatherings, to the easy camaraderie and Wade's occasional wry observations that never failed to make her smile. One particularly hot morning, after Miguel and Rosa had gone to tend the chickens, Wade lingered at the table, seeming unusually hesitant. Something on your mind? Olivia asked as she cleared the dishes. Wade nodded, turning his coffee cup between his hands. Town's having a social on Saturday evening, dance at the schoolhouse to raise money for new books. He glanced up, meeting her eyes. Thought you might like to go. Meet more folks from around here. Olivia paused, dish towel in hand. Was he asking to escort her or merely suggesting she attend? Either way, the prospect of an evening's entertainment was appealing after weeks of relative isolation. That sounds nice, she said carefully. Though I'm not sure how proper it would be for me to attend so soon after. Well, given the circumstances, Wade's expression grew serious. You're not in mourning for a husband, Olivia. You're a young woman who's new to our community. No one would think it inappropriate. He hesitated. I'd be honored to escort you if you'd allow it. The formal phrasing made her smile. Then yes, I'd be pleased to attend with you. A rare, full smile transformed Wade's usually solemn features. Good, I'll collect you at 6 on Saturday. After he left, Olivia found herself both excited and anxious about the upcoming social. It would be her first real introduction to the wider community, and she worried about how she would be received. Would people view her as an opportunist, claiming Harrison's property without having been his wife? Would they disapprove of her appearing in public with Wade so soon? More concerning were her own feelings. Despite her best efforts to maintain distance, her attraction to Wade continued to grow. His quiet strength, his understated kindness, his unexpected moments of humor all combined to create a man unlike any she'd known before. On Saturday afternoon, Olivia dressed with particular care in her best gown of forest green silk with modest bustle and lace trim at the throat and wrists. She arranged her chestnut hair in a simple updo, securing it with pins topped with small pearl beads, her mother's, one of the few precious items she'd kept when selling most of their possessions. Wade arrived precisely at 6, dressed in what was clearly his Sunday best: dark trousers, white shirt, and a black vest that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders. He'd tamed his usually windswept hair, and the effect was striking. For a moment, they simply stared at one another. "You look beautiful," Wade said finally, the directness of the compliment making Olivia blush. "Thank you, you're quite handsome yourself." The schoolhouse was transformed for the occasion with paper lanterns strung across the ceiling and flowers decorating every available surface. A small band played in one corner, while tables laden with food and drink lined the opposite wall. Nearly everyone from Palisade and the surrounding ranches seemed to be in attendance. As they entered, conversation briefly stilled before resuming with increased vigor. Olivia felt the weight of curious stares but lifted her chin and smiled as Wade began making introductions. Most people were welcoming, if reserved, though a few of the older women regarded her with obvious suspicion. "Don't mind Mrs. Granby and her friends," Wade murmured as they moved away from a particularly frosty greeting. "They've appointed themselves the moral guardians of Palisade. No one meets their standards." The observation made Olivia laugh, easing some of her tension. "And what do they think of you, Mr. O'Brien?" "Confirmed bachelor, set in his ways. Probably beyond redemption," Wade replied with a wink that sent an unexpected thrill through her. The evening progressed pleasantly as Olivia met more of the community. Mrs. Peterson introduced her to several potential sewing clients, while Sheriff Tanner's wife insisted she join their church's Ladies' Aid Society. By the time the dancing began, Olivia felt cautiously optimistic about her place in Palisade. Wade proved to be an excellent dancer, guiding her confidently through waltzes and reels. His hand at her waist was warm and steady, his movements surprisingly graceful for a man who spent his days on horseback. "Where did you learn to dance so well?" Olivia asked during a brief rest between songs. A shadow crossed his face. "My wife taught me." Olivia froze, stunned by this unexpected revelation. "Your wife, you never mentioned Rebecca," Wade said quietly. "She died 12 years ago, childbirth, we lost the baby too." "I'm so sorry," Olivia whispered, understanding now the sadness she sometimes glimpsed in his eyes. Wade nodded, his gaze distant. "She loved dancing, said even cowboys should know how to waltz properly." A small smile touched his lips at the memory. Before Olivia could respond, the band struck up another tune and Wade extended his hand. "Shall we?" As they rejoined the dancers, Olivia's mind raced with this new information. Wade had been married, had loved and lost. It explained much about him, his self-sufficiency, his occasional melancholy, his understanding of grief. It also complicated her growing feelings. Was she merely a reminder of what he'd lost, a substitute for his Rebecca? The remainder of the evening passed in a blur of dancing, conversation, and carefully maintained smiles. When Wade finally escorted her home, the moon hung low in the sky, bathing the landscape in silver light. At Harrison's her front door, Wade removed his hat. "Thank you for coming tonight. It was good to see you enjoying yourself." "I did enjoy it," Olivia said honestly. "Thank you for introducing me to everyone." A moment of awkward silence stretched between them, laden with unspoken thoughts and questions. "Well," Wade said finally, "good night, Olivia." "Good night, Wade." She watched him walk to his horse, his figure outlined against the moonlit plains. Only when he'd ridden away did she enter the house, her mind still churning with revelations and uncertainties. The following week brought unexpected developments. First, Reverend Simmons visited, ostensibly to check on her welfare but clearly curious about her relationship with Wade. His questions were politely phrased but probing, particularly regarding her intentions toward Harrison's property. "The community would understand if you decided to return east," he suggested delicately. "No one would think less of you for reconsidering your situation." Olivia maintained her composure, though his implications stung. "Thank you for your concern, Reverend, but I'm quite content for now. Mr. Thornton is reviewing my legal options regarding the property, and I'm establishing myself as a seamstress." The minister departed looking dissatisfied, leaving Olivia with the distinct impression that not everyone in Palisade welcomed her presence. The second development came in the form of a letter from Thornton, delivered by Wade during one of his now daily visits. The lawyer had researched territorial law and found precedent for a woman in her position to inherit despite the lack of formal marriage. He recommended she proceed with filing a claim and offered to begin the necessary paperwork. Wade watched her face as she read the letter. "Good news," Olivia nodded, though her feelings were mixed. Mr. Thornton believes I have a strong case for inheritance. That doesn't surprise me, Wade said, settling into a chair at the kitchen table. Will you proceed? She hesitated. I'm not certain. It feels presumptuous somehow. I never actually married Harrison. But you would have, Wade pointed out. You fulfilled your part of the arrangement. The fact that he died before the wedding doesn't change the commitment you made. His support was unwavering, which only complicated Olivia's confusion. Since the dance, Wade had been a constant presence, helping around the property, bringing supplies, simply keeping her company in the evenings. Yet he'd made no romantic overtures, maintaining a careful distance that both relieved and disappointed her. There's something else to consider, Wade continued when she remained silent. If you don't claim the property, it will eventually be auctioned, could go to anyone, might even be divided up. Harrison loved this land. He'd want it kept intact, tended by someone who appreciates it. Put that way, the decision seemed clearer. You're right, Olivia acknowledged. I'll write to Mr. Thornton tomorrow. Wade nodded, satisfaction evident in his expression. Good. Now I was wondering if you might join me for dinner tomorrow evening, at my place. Mrs. Hollister's making her famous pot roast. The invitation was casual, yet Olivia detected something different in Wade's tone. I'd be delighted, she replied, ignoring the flutter of anticipation in her stomach. The following evening, Wade collected her in his buggy rather than the usual wagon, dressed in clean clothes that suggested this was more than a neighborly meal. At his ranch, the dining room table was set with what appeared to be his best china and silverware, while Mrs. Hollister served with unusual formality. After the housekeeper retired to the kitchen, Wade poured wine into crystal glasses that caught the lamplight. A toast, he proposed, to new beginnings. Olivia raised her glass, studying him over its rim. New beginnings, she echoed, wondering at his meaning. Throughout dinner, Wade seemed both more relaxed and more nervous than usual, maintaining steady conversation while occasionally lapsing into distracted silence. When Mrs. Hollister served dessert, a delicious apple pie, he finally addressed what was clearly on his mind. Olivia, I've been thinking about your situation, about Harrison's property and your future here. She set down her fork, suddenly tense. Yes, Wade leaned forward, his expression earnest. I'd like to make you an offer, a business arrangement of sorts. Of all the things she might have expected, this wasn't one of them. What kind of arrangement? A partnership, he explained. My ranch adjoins Harrison's property. Together, they would make a substantial operation. More cattle, more grazing land, more potential for profit. Disappointment washed over Olivia. A business proposition, of course. What had she expected? I see, she said carefully. You want to buy Harrison's land from me, assuming I inherit? No, Wade corrected quickly. Not buy it. Combine our operations. You would retain ownership of your property, I would keep mine, but we would run them as a single ranch. He hesitated. It would require us to marry, of course, for propriety's sake. Olivia nearly dropped her wineglass. Marry. Wade's cheeks colored slightly, but he continued with determination. Yes, it would be a practical arrangement. You need security and standing in the community. Well, I've been alone too long. He cleared his throat. We get along well, I respect you, and I believe you respect me. It could be a good partnership. Olivia stared at him, emotions warring within her. Part of her was flattered by the proposal, another part deeply disappointed by its practical nature. She'd begun to hope that Wade's attention stemmed from genuine affection, not calculated advantage. That's quite an offer, she said finally, her voice carefully neutral. But I'm not looking for another mail-order arrangement, Mr. O'Brien. I came west once to marry a stranger for practical reasons. I won't do it again. Wade's expression fell, genuine hurt replacing his usual composure. That's not what thank you for dinner, Olivia interrupted, rising from the table, but I believe it's time for me to return home. The ride back to Harrison's ranch passed in strained silence. At her door, Wade finally spoke. I've offended you, that wasn't my intention. Olivia sighed, her anger fading into sadness. You haven't offended me, you've made a reasonable proposal based on mutual benefit. It's very logical. But not what you want, Wade observed quietly. No, she admitted. It's not what I want. He nodded, accepting her answer with the same dignity he brought to everything. I understand. Good night, Olivia. For the next several days, Wade kept his distance. Miguel reported that he was busy with a cattle drive to Virginia City, but Olivia suspected he was giving her space after his failed proposal. The separation should have been a relief. Instead, she found herself missing his presence acutely. Her days were filled with sewing, garden work, and correspondence with Thornton regarding her inheritance claim. The lawyer had filed the initial paperwork and believed a judge would rule in her favor within a few months. The news should have been cause for celebration, but Olivia found her victory hollow without Wade to share it. A week after the disastrous dinner, Sheriff Tanner arrived with troubling information. A man named Cyrus Barlow had surfaced in Carson City, claiming to be Harrison's cousin and rightful heir. "Thornton's checking into it," the sheriff explained. "But thought you should know. This fellow's got documents, family Bible, old letters, that sort of thing. Might complicate your claim." The news was unsettling, though not entirely surprising. Inheritance cases often attracted opportunists. Still, the possibility of losing the property her home left Olivia feeling vulnerable. That evening, as she sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the western sky in shades of gold and crimson, hoofbeats announced a rider approaching. Her heart leapt when she recognized Wade, his tall figure silhouetted against the fading light. He dismounted slowly, removing his hat as he approached the porch. "Evening, Olivia. Hope I'm not intruding." "Not at all," she said, gesturing to the empty chair beside her. "Sheriff Tanner visited today," Wade nodded, taking the offered seat. "I heard. Thornton sent word to me as well, asked if I knew anything about Harrison having cousins." "Do you?" He mentioned family back east once or twice, but never specifics. Wade stretched his long legs before him. "Thornton will investigate. If this Cyrus fellow is legitimate, we'll know soon enough." The casual "we" warmed Olivia unexpectedly. Despite their awkwardness, Wade still considered her concerns his own. "I've been thinking about your proposal," she said suddenly, surprising herself with the admission. Wade went very still. "Have you?" Olivia nodded, choosing her words carefully. "It was a generous offer, a sensible one too, but I realized something important during this past week." "What's that?" "I don't want sensible anymore." She turned to face him fully. "When I agreed to marry Harrison, it was a practical decision: security, stability, a home of my own." "All good reasons, but not enough." Wade's expression was unreadable in the gathering dusk. "What would be enough?" Gathering her courage, Olivia continued. "Love, passion, partnership based on more than convenience or advantage." She took a deep breath. "I've come to care for you, Wade. Not as a neighbor, not as a friend, but as a man. A man I could love if given the chance. But I won't enter another marriage of convenience, even with someone I admire as much as you." For a long moment, Wade said nothing. Then, to Olivia's astonishment, he began to laugh, a rich, deep sound that held more relief than humor. "Olivia Fairchild," he said when he'd composed himself, "I've made a proper mess of this, haven't I?" Confused, she shook her head. "I don't understand." Wade leaned forward, his eyes intent on hers. "My proposal wasn't about ranches or property or practical arrangements. Those were excuses, safe reasons I could offer without risking my heart." He reached for her hand, his touch warm and sure. "The truth is, I've been falling in love with you since the day you stepped off that train. Your courage, your determination, your kindness, everything about you calls to something in me I thought died with Rebecca." Joy bloomed in Olivia's chest, so intense it nearly took her breath away. "Then why didn't you simply say so?" "Because I was afraid," Wade admitted softly. "Afraid you still mourned what might have been with Harrison. Afraid I was too broken, too set in my ways to be what you need. Afraid of loving and losing again." He squeezed her hand gently. "But this week without you showed me that fear of loss is a poor reason to deny love when it's standing right in front of you." Olivia's eyes filled with tears as Wade slid from his chair to kneel before her. "I'm asking again, Olivia Fairchild, but with the truth this time. I love you. I want to build a life with you not because it's practical or advantageous, but because I can't imagine my future without you in it. Will you marry me?" "Yes," Olivia whispered, her heart overflowing. "Yes, I will." Wade's kiss was gentle at first, then deepening with a hunger that matched her own. When they finally parted, both breathless, he pressed his forehead to hers. "I should have done that a long time ago," Olivia laughed softly. "We have time to make up for it." The weeks that followed were filled with both joy and challenge. Thornton confirmed that Cyrus Barlow was indeed Harrison's cousin, though his claim to the property was tenuous given Harrison's clear intention to leave everything to Olivia. Still, the complication delayed the inheritance proceedings, leaving Olivia in an uncertain position. Wade proposed a solution. They would marry sooner rather than later, combining their households at his ranch while maintaining her claim to Harrison's property. Miguel and Rosa would continue managing the smaller ranch until the legal matters were resolved. Once the inheritance is settled, we'll decide together what to do with both properties, Wade assured her. They're adjoining lands, we could run them as one operation while maintaining separate deeds if that makes you more comfortable. Olivia appreciated his sensitivity to her independence. I trust you, Wade. Whatever we decide, we'll decide together. Their wedding took place on a brilliant September morning at the small church in Palisade. The entire town turned out for the occasion, curiosity about their whirlwind romance overcoming any lingering doubts about Olivia's situation. She wore a cream-colored dress of her own making, with Rosa's lace veil and a bouquet of wildflowers gathered from the hills around Wade's ranch. He waited at the altar in a new suit ordered from Carson City, his expression a mixture of awe and happiness that made Olivia's heart soar. The celebration afterward at Wade's ranch, their ranch now lasted well into the evening. As the last guests departed and twilight settled over the land, Wade led Olivia to the porch where they could watch the stars emerge. Happy, Mrs. O'Brien? He asked, his arm warm around her waist. Happier than I ever imagined possible, she answered truthfully. Their life together unfolded with both expected joys and unforeseen challenges. The territorial court eventually ruled in Olivia's favor regarding Harrison's property, though not without complications. Cyrus Barlow contested the decision, necessitating additional legal proceedings that stretched through the winter. Meanwhile, Olivia's sewing business flourished. She converted one room of their home into a workshop where she created everything from everyday garments to wedding dresses for clients throughout the region. When Mrs. Peterson decided to retire, she offered to sell Olivia her shop in town, an opportunity that Wade encouraged her to accept. You have a gift, he told her when she hesitated over the investment, and Palisade needs good craftspeople. Besides, he added with a grin, I married an independent woman. I'd be a poor husband if I tried to change that now. By the following spring, with the legal battles finally resolved, they faced the decision of what to do with Harrison's property. After much discussion, they chose to maintain both ranches, with Miguel and Rosa living in the main house and overseeing operations as paid managers. It feels right, Olivia explained to Wade as they rode together across the combined expanse of their land. Harrison brought me west for a new beginning. In a way, he made all this possible, Wade nodded, understanding as always. He was a good man. I think he'd be pleased to see his land still being cared for and to know you found happiness here. In May of 1884, exactly 2 years after Olivia's arrival in Nevada, their first child was born, a son they named William Harrison O'Brien, honoring both Wade's father and the man whose death had inadvertently brought them together. As Olivia nursed their son in the nursery Wade had built with his own hands, she reflected on the twisting path that had led her to this moment. The desperate young woman who had boarded a train in Boston, seeking security in a marriage of convenience with a stranger, could never have imagined the love she would find instead. Wade found her there, gazing down at their sleeping infant. Penny for your thoughts, love. Olivia smiled up at him, her heart full. I was thinking about doors. Doors, Wade raised an eyebrow, settling beside her on the window seat. When I arrived and found Harrison dead, I thought all doors had closed for me, she explained. Then you said something I'll never forget. My door is open. It seemed like such a simple offer of shelter at the time, but it was so much more. Wade took her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. Best words I ever spoke. The beginning of everything, Olivia agreed, leaning into his embrace as they watched their son sleep, the future stretching before them as vast and promising as the Nevada sky. The years passed, their family and prosperity growing together. The combined ranches flourished under Wade's management, while Olivia's dressmaking business became the finest in the county. William was joined by a sister, Emma Rebecca in 1886 and another brother, Joseph Michael, in 1889. Through droughts and harsh winters, through economic downturns and personal challenges, Wade and Olivia faced life's uncertainties together. Their love, born in unlikely circumstances, proved resilient, deepening with each shared struggle and joy. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Wade surprised Olivia with a special gift: the deed to Harrison's property, transferred solely into her name. "It was always meant to be yours," he said when she protested. "I just wanted to make it official." Olivia understood the gesture's significance. It wasn't about the land itself, but the recognition of her independence, her identity separate from but intertwined with his. "Thank you," she said simply, knowing he would understand all she couldn't express in words. Later that evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset, a ritual they'd maintained throughout their marriage, Olivia reflected on how differently her life might have unfolded had Harrison lived. She would have had the security she sought, perhaps contentment, but never the profound partnership she'd found with Wade. "Do you ever think about how strange life is?" she asked him. "How the worst moments sometimes lead to the greatest joys?" Wade's arm tightened around her shoulders. "I think about it every day. When Rebecca died, I thought my heart died too, closed myself off for years, convinced I'd never love again." He kissed her temple gently. Then a stubborn Boston woman stepped off the train, looking lost but determined, and everything changed. "Not immediately," Olivia reminded him with a smile. "You were quite reserved at first," Wade chuckled. "Cautious. Terrified, actually. Falling in love with you was the most frightening thing I've ever done and the most rewarding." As twilight deepened into night, they remained on the porch, watching their children play in the yard while the first stars appeared overhead. The ranch stretched around them, a testament to their shared labor and vision. "We've built something good here," Olivia said softly. "We have," Wade agreed. "Something that will last." In the distance, a lone coyote called to its mate, the sound echoing across the Nevada plains. Olivia leaned against Wade's shoulder, grateful beyond words for the unexpected path that had led her home, not to Harrison Barlow's ranch, but to Wade O'Brien's heart, where an open door had become an open future, filled with possibilities neither could have imagined that fateful day at Palisade Station. And as the night deepened around them, stars scattered like diamonds across the vast western sky, Olivia knew with absolute certainty that she had found not just shelter, but the truest meaning of home.